biggest project we've done was for the, I believe it's the largest single property in the state of Oklahoma. It was a very large cattle ranch, and we were helping with what's called mob grazing, where they move the cattle in a more natural way, kind of the way natural native herds move historically. So what we do is we were pumping ponds full of water, not just small cisterns or anything of that. They're relatively big systems, and we oversize the solar for them so that the pumps wake up very early in the morning and the pumps go to sleep very late at night. So we get a really long pumping window. We oversize the solar so that the pumps wake up on cloudy days. We were installing our last one, and it was raining on us, and our pumps still turned on. So there's a balance that you try and find between the cost of generation, the cost of the modules themselves, which have been dropping pretty significantly in recent years, and the balance of system components. So we do that. I mean, we're trying to optimize that relationship on all of the systems we build. So
a lot of the application, do you run a standard commercial pump, or you run a DC?
Well, standard is the question. We use typically products from a company called Grundfos. And they make a couple of product lines, one specific product line called the SQ Flex that we really, really like because it will eat anything. AC, DC, high voltage, low voltage, it doesn't care. It's going to pump water out of the ground if you can get some electricity to it. So we use those because they're easy to wake up with solar panels. So the Grundfos, I have a Grundfos at my house. It's not the DC version, it's just an AC version, but it can eat such poor power quality that I could take one of those cheap truck stop inverters that you get that would make equipment hum if you plugged anything decent into it, and I can plug my pump into that, and I can get water out of the ground if I need to. So we really like Grundfos, that's the brand. Wow, we're getting into some deep stuff, and I have not even begun the slides. This is going to be super cool. What else? Somebody mentioned something I want. Sir?
Small commercial use, if you generate more than what you actually need, is OG&E buying it back yet?
Sort of. It's a good question. So what we have in Oklahoma is called, I bet we could spend the entire evening just doing this, by the way. Just going answering all your questions about solar. You got the right guy in the right room tonight. What we have with OG&E and with most utilities in the state of Oklahoma is a relationship called net metering. So we get to rotate the meter backwards during the course of one billing period and accumulate credits with utility like they're a bank. So if you are generating, whether it's residential or commercial, if you're making more electricity than you're using, say nobody's home during the day and your solar array's just rocking it, you are banking the energy. If your house can't use it, it's backfeeding the grid. The utility is recording that production and you're earning credits for it. You can use that the next day. You can use that at night. But at the end of the billing period, 1 month, in the case of OG&E, any excess generation is granted, given away for free to the utility. So what we try to do so when I'm doing an analysis for somebody, and I'm trying to eliminate consumption from the utility grid, I won't target 100% because there will be months where you have low load because you don't have climate control, but I've got high production, where I'm just giving away electricity to the grid or to the utility for free. And what that does is takes me off my peak economics, the peak of my economic curve where I'm showing you the best cash flow. So I won't try and shoot for 100%. I'll tend to target something closer to 70 or 80% because that keeps me from going into those net excess generation thresholds. You know what I mean by net excess generation? That's the stuff we give away at the end of the month. That's a fancy term for giving energy away. And I'm going to try and avoid fancy terms. I think it's a curse of any industry that we all speak in 3-letter acronyms to try and keep people out. So I'm going to work real hard to speak regular English to everybody. But if I fail, just say, what are you talking about, Steve? Please. So net metering, that's what we have. We rotate the meter backwards at the end of the month. Anything extra that we haven't been able to use, they get for free. Long answer, short question, right? Okay. Yep.
So, is there any laws in Oklahoma, like if you wanted to build a solar farm and sell it to your neighbors, is there any laws against that?
Absolutely against the law. I'm not going to talk about politics tonight, but I am going to talk about policy. And those are two different things. Politics shouldn't be part of sound energy policy. It should just be good decision making. So I'm glad to talk about policy. In Oklahoma, we have a policy that prohibits what's called third-party ownership. That is, somebody else owns a solar system and sells you electricity. The only person that can be a customer of electricity for sale in that manner is the utility. Those are the only people that can be an off-taker off a solar electric system that you own to sell electricity. You can't, for example, if I wanted to put solar on my church and give the electricity to my church and capture the tax credits associated with that equipment, that's against the law in the state of Oklahoma. You cannot be an electricity provider unless you are a utility. So that's kind of how it's worded. We really have to get this changed. It's a big constraint on the market. It keeps a lot of people from going solar that could.
What if you like owned several homes in the same area, but you owned them all? Could you create a solar farm and feed your own houses?
No, that's against the law in the state of Oklahoma. You're going to hear that a lot when you ask about policy. We have an opportunity to make some changes right now. In fact, I'm speaking to the House Committee on Energy and the Environment on October 25th about exactly these issues. So we're having a talk about that in the state of Oklahoma right now. So what you're asking about is, can I generate electricity in one location and offset consumption at a meter at another location? Do I understand that?
Well, what if you even ran your own electrical lines separately? What if it's all in-house?
You can't, if you put the solar behind the meter, on your side of the meter, you can do it. If you are trying to push electricity back for credit and apply that credit to a different meter, you cannot. So what that's called is virtual net metering or remote net metering. They have it in Vermont, they have it in New York, they have it in a number of other places and the reason they have that is it was for wind power actually. So farmers can put a wind turbine up on the hill, but their barns are down where they're protected from the wind. So they could use two separate meters to generate on the hill, eliminate consumption in the valley.
I was more thinking like, so if you build like a whole housing development,
Yeah.
and you wanted to build a solar farm, you can't even be like, if you control all the power lines in that whole
If you
development,
control all the power, well,
If it's on one lot of land, one private property.
yeah, I
or
think
is it on subdivided
the
property?
key is not property lines but meters. I think the key is whose service is the property or whose name is the property's in or the service in, and how is that energy distributed? Because you couldn't sell it, you might be able to have co-ownership. I don't know. Maybe there's a co-ownership model that you could create that could help you get around this law, possibly. There's not a clean, easy way to do it, obviously. And there's not a way to do it without actual wires to actual houses. Utilities won't allow you to do it on a purely accounting basis, although it's cheaper and easier for everyone to do.
So are you saying that whether it's wind or solar, that you have to be a utility?
Yes, to be an off-taker. Off-taker is the person that buys the energy. That's what we call it. And there's one of that fancy, solar jargon that I'm already throwing out. The person that buys the electricity in the state of Oklahoma has to be a utility, unless you are a utility, and then you can buy it.
I heard from someone that there are even are restrictions on financing, whether it be construction or otherwise, related to solar.
Yep, no leasing, no third-party ownership. So companies like, Solar City in California, they can't do business here because their business model is against the law. So,
But
they're third-party financing, leasing against the law.
But Florida Power can come and build wind farms and sell to OG&E?
Yes. That's the legislation that we have right now. And I'm working hard to change that. I'm active in state politics and have been since we started this company 4 years ago. trying to, we have an opportunity to do things right. We have an opportunity to learn from the mistakes that other states have made and enact policy before we have an active market that lets solar benefit all ratepayers and lets all of us leverage private investment in solar for public good to lower all our costs. And that's really what happens. So we have an opportunity to change some legislation in this state to make things better so that we can do that. We have entrenched interests that would rather not see some of those things change. So it takes education and time and money. I have not even started our presentation. This is a good talk. Hey. But this is fun. Just, hey man, just going back and forth with some questions until I start this big old presentation. Let's see.
Are there any federal energy grants for supporting the solar or wind energy right now?
There are. I knew we'd get to one that I had a slide about. There is a 30% federal tax credit for the installation of solar or wind systems. They're for both commercial and residential applications. So you take 30% of your total cost, equipment, installation, everything, right off your federal tax liability in the year that it was installed. If it's a commercial system, then you also can take what's called accelerated depreciation, 5-year depreciation on it. So that, for commercial projects, that's another, depending on your tax bracket, call it another 22 to 27% or so in tax benefits that you can back out of the project. So there are, between depreciation and the federal tax credit, commercial projects see a pretty good tax position on projects in the state.
When you talk about excess energy produced, rather than giving it to OG&E, for instance, is it possible to store it in batteries?
It is, but it's expensive to do so. And I got a slide on that one too. Batteries are not typically part of a modern solar energy system because, or a grid-tied solar energy system, because they add cost and complexity, both initial cost and life cycle cost, because they have a limited lifespan and a much shorter lifespan than the other equipment in the system. So it's possible to store it in batteries, but it's kind of expensive. I think that's going to change. I think that's going to get better over the next 5 to 10 years as the electric automobile industry batteries become more accessible for stationary applications. That's what we have, stationary apps. I think the market's going to change significantly. So hold on for batteries a little bit. If you really want one now, we can get you the nicest one made. But we typically suggest that people hold off.
Not time yet.
Not time yet. All right. It's still question and answer time. Yes, sir.
Hey, who do we talk to with our state representatives and so on and so forth to get solar a little more accepted in Oklahoma and possibly bring in, you know, the third party and whatnot?
That's a really good question.
How do we get politically active in the state?
Well, I typically work with Johnson Bridgewater at the Sierra Club. He is working very hard to try, and regardless of how you feel about the other things Sierra Club does or their politics, they're doing good work on behalf of solar energy in the state of Oklahoma. There's no question about that. So they are the ones that were able to initiate this. So what's happening right now at the state legislature is called an interim study on the economic impacts of distributed generation. And all that means is they want to know how much money Oklahoma can make if we start doing solar. And I get to go tell them on October 25th how changes in policy can enable Oklahoma to build more solar projects and solar jobs and tax revenue and all the things that go with building more solar.
Who are you presenting that before?
I don't know who all's on it, but the Committee for Energy and the Environment.
When you say distributed, do you mean distributed as in on rooftops, individual? That's why the distributed is used in that phrase.
Exactly right. Distributed generation, because here I go with
They
this.
don't realize.
I know. You're going to have to call me out on my industry jargon every time, because we all get stuck in it. So distributed generation means electrical generation where the load is, where the energy is consumed, on people's roofs and people's yards, over the parking lots. So the generation is distributed in the same way that the load is. That's what distributed generation means, and that's what we're talking about. It's a little bit different in how it impacts the utility grid compared to centralized generation, all in one spot. It has some benefits that centralized generation doesn't provide. Sir?
People we know in North Korea, if they were to hit us with an electronic magnetic pulse, would that affect this equipment in terms of either windmills or solar?
Yeah, it's smoking. Mostly.
Would that-
Yeah, EMPs. It depends, I guess is the answer. Most things are not what would be referred to as EMP hardened. So we could put our power electronics in a line vault underground for you if you're concerned about that. And we could certainly protect it to some extent from EMPs. But for the most part, that's not something that this technology is necessarily designed to withstand. So you'd have to electromagnetic pulse. It's just a big electric pulse set off in the atmosphere that can destroy electronics. It's an attack.
Do we know whether, in the city of Norman, whether they require you to bring everything up to code? Like we were doing solar installation, did they permit?
Yep, they do. When they come in and inspect, they'll want your home to be up to code.
And who inspect?
It's an electrical inspection with the city. There's not a mechanical, and we don't have to submit drawings to the city. They just come for electrical inspections.
The inspection from the panels, for the wiring and all that too, doesn't pass
The city ensures that the city is what do they call that's whose jurisdiction we're in. So they are the ones that sign off on our ability to meet electric code, if I understand your question correctly.
No, it's the people installing it. Instead of, if you don't do it yourself, obviously you're gonna hire it out to somebody.
To us, yeah, we're the guys.
So you guys do that, that's on this end, so
Yeah.
you have technicians that come out.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. I'm Steve from Delta Energy and Design. We provide turnkey solar solutions across the state of Oklahoma. That means we do everything from contact your utility to wholesale service if it's required. So we provide installation, design, consulting, manufacturing, all kinds of services.
Okay.
But our primary function is to install solar panels for you guys. That's our job.